Cyclone Garance, a Category 3, heading for Réunion Island. So this small but powerful cyclone has taken its turn towards the south and is now heading directly towards the island of Réunion, the western of the Mascarene Islands. Mauritius, off to its right hand side as well, will be probably hit with a few of the outer bands and possibly some fairly strong winds there too. The storm at the centre though has winds estimated at 120 miles per hour, that's 190 kilometers per hour sustained. Pressure estimate 951 millibars, moving nearly due south at 9 miles per hour or 15 kilometers per hour. This is information as of 6 p.m. Local time this February 27. So it is rather small, but it does obviously have decent power in it. The wind field, tropical storm wind field, extends out up to 125 nautical miles, which is probably just over 200 kilometers. Current position 18.9 south, 55.3 degrees east. And that position puts it 225 kilometers north of St. Denis, 240 from St. Paul, 268 from Grand Bay, Mauritius, 270 from Port Louis, and 277 from St. Pierre on the southern side of Réunion Island. Class 3 warnings remain in effect for Mauritius and an orange cyclone warning in effect for the island of Réunion at this time. The storm is expected to arrive and make landfall potentially in the early hours of Friday. So damaging winds will be the primary hazard if the storm holds on to this intensity. That would be very strong winds for the island, delivering a concentrated area of very strong winds to Réunion in the early hours of Friday. Even at this stage, small deviations in track could make a significant difference given the storm's small size. Mauritius may still receive strong winds as well, with heavy rainfall expected, obviously further west in particular. Here's the forecast then for the next few days. The storm will continue to track southwards. Looks like it might clip the western side of Réunion now on the basis of the current trajectory. And then it will continue southwards, then southeasterly, turn post-tropical over the weekend. And this remnant here will actually pick up strength possibly now by Monday or Tuesday as it passes Isle Amsterdam, way down there in the deep South Indian Ocean, but it will not be tropical. Current intensity right now, decent agreement between the agencies and satellite estimates of Category 3 at least. 115 miles per hour is the lower bound on the ADT, but all the agencies going with 120-ish right now, which is a mid-range Category 3 storm. The satellite imagery certainly backs that up with a decent ring of convection and an eye feature that was more prominent earlier. It does appear to be fading away a bit right now. We'll take a look on the satellite shortly. Here's the forecast from Meteo France, looking at both Garance and Hondé there, calling for that storm to pass just south of Madagascar, possibly stalling offshore. But as you can see, for Garance, it's a very close pass / landfall there, grazing the western coast of Réunion. JTWC also on board with a similar forecast. Not very much weakening before landfall, although we are seeing some indications that it might capitulate completely and possibly spare the island the winds that it currently has right now. Well, you can see the disparity between the size differences on these two storms again on the GFS model run. Garance moving further south very quickly there, and Hondé hugging the coast of southern Madagascar before peeling away by the time we get to around the 3rd of March, and then down towards the south more decidedly than it's been saying in more recent runs. So actually remains on the move and possibly not delivering quite as much rain as expected. Garance is pretty much set in stone what it's going to do. The main question marks now are whether it will actually make a direct landfall or maybe pass just towards the west, or whether it will hold on to all of that intensity, or whether it will collapse, as smaller storms are more susceptible to structural collapse before it actually arrives on the island. But obviously people should be preparing for the worst, which would be a mid-range Category 3 landfall there on the island of Réunion, which is very powerful amongst the most powerful storms that we've seen in recent times. There's both of the storms with the simulated radar reflectivity. Huge amounts of rain there for the southern part of Madagascar as the storm trails along their Hondé before moving back towards the south and eventually dying off itself. Looking at the projected rainfall totals then over the next 7-day period, interestingly those numbers have actually gone down a little bit for Réunion Island, possibly looking up to still around 150 millimeters in addition to anything that's already fallen. So that could still be sizable, especially if it falls all at the same time. Could be a major flash flooding concern. Mauritius not so much, probably less than 50 millimeters now. And looking at southern Madagascar, we were looking at models last night calling for 50 inches nearly, but now it's down to 15 or 16, so that's much better, but still 400 millimeters of rain. Could be some major flash flooding concerns along the southern tip of Madagascar, all the way round at that horseshoe shape of the southern tip of the coastline. Well, sea surface temperatures are still looking good as well. These numbers read a little bit low, and I'll convert them to Celsius. Around 29 degrees Celsius there, possibly up to 30 in a few spots around Réunion Island. A little bit cooler off the southern tip of Madagascar, where temperatures are around 27 degrees Celsius, maybe just a slight bit below that at times as well. But for both of those storms, that is still enough to sustain both of them, but especially for Garance, given its smaller shape, it will be using up less energy over a more concentrated area, and that will obviously run in the storm's favour. Well, here's satellite imagery over the course of today from EU Met View. This is Meteosat 11, I believe, as the storm continues to move more southerly now. Some visible imagery from the course of today, really starting to show off that eye. It didn't get all the way down to the surface in its visual appearance from the top-down view, but certainly looked quite good as we take a look at some of these imageries here. This is Meteosat 9 now, I believe, from RAM, showing the storm's direction. Still just a slight eastward element to it, but we do expect it to curve a little bit more towards the south-southwest over the next few hours. Notably, the eye has actually gotten a bit worse again in the last few frames. That could be a promising sign that the storm has started a weakening trend. And here's a super close-up here from India's rapid satellite, showing the storm's progression, and probably the best imagery of its eye today, where you can actually see down to the surface on those earlier frames, but again losing the shape a little bit towards the end of that loop, which might give us a little bit of a cause for hope. The Force 13 website has all of this in real time as well, force13.com/satellite. That's what we're looking at now, where we have that water vapor imagery too, showing how the storm's been progressing, and it does look like it's just hanging on with a bit more extra convection there in the last few frames along that southern side, whether the eye wall structure might be just holding in there and might actually break shortly, or maybe the storm will surprise us again and intensify a little bit more and get itself sorted out. But at the moment it is a very precarious position for everyone involved, and this is a close-up view here from the perspective of the Mascarene Islands. The storm entering from the top, getting closer and closer, obviously ticking down those kilometers, and this is radar imagery showing one or two gnarly lines of rain there hitting Mauritius, closing in, zooming right in there on the eye and back down towards the islands again, where the first main bands of the storm will be arriving fairly soon. And let's take a look around the world at a quick view right now. What we've got, X-ray and XL2 systems down in the South Pacific that are long gone now, it has to be said. They've been post-tropical for a while. Obviously nothing down in the South Atlantic, and then the action in the South Indian Ocean. There's Hyundai off the coast of Madagascar, Garance of course, what's left of Bianca, which is very little now, off Western Australia, Alfred a high-end Category 2, and Siru a tropical storm about to die off near Vanuatu.